Hello everyone and welcome back to a new review. I'm sorry that today's is a bit delayed, but yesterday I had dinner with my boyfriend and his family and we had like a mini celebration, so that's why I didn't upload yesterday. But I did post about it, so I didn't not keep you guys informed. But today we're going to be doing another review. As I said, this is a classic album that I know like the back of my hand, as the saying goes. And that album is Tarkus by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Now, I didn't need to write notes for this because I know this album ridiculously well. I've listened to it hundreds of times probably at this point. If I'm not listening to anything else, I'm usually listening to something from Tarkus. It's my favourite ELP album, and it's one of my favourite prog albums of all time, one of my favourite albums in general of all time. So let's just get into it because I have a lot to say about this album. It's got a very special place in my heart because my dad showed me this album because when he was around my age, he was really big into ELP. So it's almost like a genetic thing. Like, you just become completely obsessed with Emerson, Lake and Palmer once you hit 18, 19 years old. So if I ever have children in the future, hopefully they might go through the Emerson, Lake and Palmer movement like I did. Still am. Yeah. I discovered this group first year of college, which was like 2 or 3 years ago. Two years ago. And ever since then I've loved them. I've loved their sound. I love what they're all about. You know, their progression of albums in the 70s, and they're just a fantastic band. I know a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people who really hate Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's very odd because the fans I see, that you either really love them or you really hate them. I've never seen anyone who's a middle ground. I'm on the very, very far I love them side, but I know a lot of people don't really like them. I don't know why. They're one of the, you know, front bands of progressive rock, one of the big names. But anyway, that's my experience with this group. I have a very kind of big attachment with them and this album. So without further ado, let's just get into it. By the way, I'm burning incense in the background because it looks a lot better rather than the smoke coming in from this way, which is, my desk is over here, so I keep my incense over here. But I'm putting it in the back now as almost like a little, just a nice vibe that we got going on here. When was this album released? This is a 1971 album, and I think a lot of people know by now 1971 was a very, very good year for albums, not just in progressive rock, but in all genres of music. I mean, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, ELP, Genesis, and all these bands were releasing classic albums in 1971. Jethro Tull, you know, Aqualung. Yes, all of these bands were releasing great albums in 1971. This one is part of the crowd as well. Very, very great album. I've got it on vinyl. I've also got it on CD, but my CD is in a box over there. It's in the Fanfare box set. So I didn't bother getting it out because it's like right at the bottom. If you have the box set, you'll know that all the memorabilia is on the top and you have to lift up the ribbon and then all the albums are underneath, but it's kind of wedged into my shelf over there, so I didn't want to kind of pull it out because it's there and I'm worried that I'll just ruin everything. So this album starts with the big 20-minute epic known as Tarkus. It's got loads of different movements in it. It's almost like a classical music piece when I put it like that. But it's just fantastic. All 20 minutes. I used to skip this one. I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why I used to skip the prog, one of the best prog epics, Tarkus. I used to skip it. I used to just listen to side 2. And then I decided to go back and listen to the whole album again in detail very recently, and just when I first listened to it after a long time, and I thought, why was I skipping this? This is genius. It's got that very kind of very proggy intro, the like that's always ingrained in my head. I'm always singing that. It gets stuck in my head a lot, and it's fantastic. Some great playing on this track, especially just the bass lines, the keyboards. Oh, the keyboards are fantastic. You can't get much better than Keith Emerson. It's just fantastic, and the drums as well, and just the transitions between each section of this big track. There's about, I think, 6 or 7 different parts of this big track, and they are just amazing. My favourite is probably Battlefield. I just love that kind of smoother side of the track. It's almost like an album within a song. It's got so many, it's just so unique. There's so many different sounds, so many different vibes and moods within this track, and I think this is a great album for someone who wants to get more into prog and wants to know the more experimental side. I know a lot of people might criticize me for saying experimental, but it is, you know, it's out there. It's completely bizarre. It was bizarre to me the first time I heard it. So I guess that is a right word to use. I mean, it's a fantastic track. The bass lines, Greg Lake's voice, just throughout this album is so well done. I mean, he can hit a lot of great range. He is a very underrated musician, in my opinion, because you've got Carl Palmer, who's a fantastic drummer, and you've obviously got Keith Emerson, who's like the well-known one in the group, I guess you could say. I mean, keyboard legend. But then there's Greg Lake, who's fantastic vocalist and guitarist, very underrated guitarist. Some great guitar moments in this track, especially in the Battlefield section. That guitar solo is fantastic. I don't see a lot of people talking about his guitar playing. I mean, it's fantastic. It's great. You can't get much better than it. It really suits their music as well. He's not just a great guitarist, he's also a great bassist and just a great musician altogether. Great composer, great songwriter as well. I mean, he's written some very, very great songs in ELP. I think my favourite song of ELP, well, one of them at least, is C'est La Vie, which is on Works Volume 1. That was one of the first ELP songs I heard outside of Tarkus, and I fell in love with it. The guitar and everything, the accordion section. All right, I'm going on a tangent here, but Tarkus, the big track, is fantastic. It's got a great intro, middle, and end. It's like a great book. Like, it hooks you in at the beginning. You got the very, you know, almost like the battle in the middle. I hate to kind of use the battlefield, like the journey, and then you've got the end, the conclusion of the journey, which is just beautiful. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm looking in here because I got the track listing in here, and the artwork. I'll just quickly say something about this artwork. It's fantastic, especially the inner sleeve here, or the gatefold. Sorry, it's just great. There's some really abstract and funky artwork. It reminds me of The Wall a bit. Well, The Wall reminds me of that. It's got the artwork in the gatefold as well. So the second track on the album is Jeremy Bender, which is a fun song. You know, it's not to be taken seriously. I quite like that about ELP, even though I think that it's not my favourite on the album. It's the same with Benny the Bouncer, which is on Brain Salad Surgery. It's just fun little songs to not really take seriously. You know, you sing along to them, and they're really great fun. I mean, me and my dad have memories of just singing that song, and it's really fun. And Mum looks at us like, what are you even singing? It's great. It's got some very strange lyrics, just very, very fun, overall fun vibe. I love the, I'm trying to remember what the name of that particular keyboard is. It's either harpsichord or like a honky-tonk kind of piano. I don't know which one it is, but it is so great, and it just shows the skill of this man. Keith Emerson can play everything. This guy can play all sorts of piano keyed based instruments. It's fantastic. He played the accordion on that C'est La Vie track. It's fantastic. It's great musicianship. And it's just a fun song. I mean, it always makes me smile. If I'm having a bad day, I usually will put on Jeremy Bender at some point in the evening, because it's just fun. It's a fun little sing-along, you know. I've had fun singing to it, and it wasn't my favourite when I first heard the album. I used to skip that one as well, because I thought, what is this song? It doesn't correlate with the album whatsoever. And then I grew to think, well, even if it doesn't correlate with the album, it's just nice. It's just a fun track. And then, Bitches Crystal, excuse my language, it goes into Bitches Crystal, which is a fantastic song. I think Greg Lake did a really great job on this song. I mean, his voice was so powerful in this track. It's just so great. And the keyboards as well, just really good. Drumming, I haven't talked much about the drumming on this album. I mean, Carl Palmer, fantastic drummer. Some of my favourite moments of his have been on this album. I love his work on, obviously, Brain Salad Surgery and Trilogy as well. Fantastic. But there are some great Carl Palmer moments on this album. Bitches Crystal is just a fantastic song. That was one that I used to listen to a lot as well when I first heard the album, because when I listen to albums for the first time, if I'm on Spotify, I'll like the songs that I like, and I'll listen to those, and then I'll go back and listen to the whole album, and then fall in love with the album again. But yeah, it's just a great song. It's ELP. Where can I where can you go wrong? It's got some great kind of dynamic as well. It's got like on the upper the do, and it's really great. And then it goes crashing back in again, and like the kind of repetition of that little kind of just keyboard moment up at the top of the piano and the higher keys, and then it crashes back in, and it's a very gripping track, and it's really great one. I listen to it a lot. It's a great song. Moving into possibly one of my favourite songs of all time, The Only Way Hymn. That is such an underrated song. It is so underrated because everyone's always talking about things like the big track, and I think not a lot of people pay attention to side 2 of this album. A lot of people don't like side 2 of this album. I love side 2. Side 2 it was my favourite before I listened back to the first track. The Only Way is such a it's such a raw song. It's the lyrics as well, they're very haunting in a way, and it's the way that Greg Lake sings, and the organ. I'm a big fan of the church organ, something big and grand. That's why I like Six Wives of Henry VIII by Rick Wakeman so much, because I love that big church organ sound and how, it was obtained in the early 70s as well. I mean, recording in a church, like, that sounds so fun. I am happy to do that if my band, Silly Lobster, want to just have an organ a church organ at some point. I'd love to have a go on that. I mean, I can play the piano a bit, so there we go. I'm an alright pianist, so but I'm going off track again. The Only Way, fantastic song, and once that really raw section is up, and it goes into this really nice classical feeling jam, and it's a very classical music feeling piece. It's the way it flows and the way it's structured as well. It's just great. The bass line in that do I love that bass line. So I've tried learning it so many times, and I'm just in awe of Greg Lake's vocals on that song. It's so great. The range, and it doesn't sound, his voice doesn't sound strained or anything. It just sounds so fluent. The song is beautiful, and it's one of my favourite songs of all time. I listen to it so much, and every time I hear it, I get shivers down my spine. It just doesn't get old for me. This is definitely a desert island take for me, this album. There's so many underrated gems on this album, especially The Only Way. I mean, I've not been able to find a live version of that anywhere on YouTube. So, and now that Keith Emerson and Greg Lake are no longer with us, we cannot hear a live version of it. I'd love to hear that live. That would have been fantastic if I could hear a live version of that. If anyone knows if there are any live versions, even if it's not on YouTube, if it's just on somewhere else. Alright, so then that moves into Infinite Space, which is like the conclusion basically of that kind of Only Way saga. It's beautiful. It's not too long either. It's just a beautiful little piece of music and works with the album. Just great. Just beautiful. Beautifully put together, and I believe it's an instrumental as well, so hearing some more, just a plain instrumental track on this album is really great. As I said, I'm a big fan of Greg Lake's voice, but I really like just hearing, Carl Palmer and Keith Emerson jamming back and forth with each other. It's really, really great. I love that. And I haven't really spoken much about this, but they're a 3-piece band, and like Rush, they've got such a big sound, and I just really love that 3 very, very talented people can just make that big sound. And the big organ sound, I think, is what really makes ELP for me. And the experience of listening to ELP is that big organ sound and that very distinct Keith Emerson style of playing. I've heard it in different, more recent prog albums. I can almost pick out, oh, this was definitely inspired by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or this was definitely inspired by Yes, or whatever. Because I can hear the differences in piano playing and keyboard playing. I'm that much into the music. And, I think anyone who's into prog can distinguish a band like Yes or ELP from Canterbury scene keyboards playing. Because, one's very jazzy, one's very classical based. So it's a great dynamic, and I love hearing different types of keyboard and different types of keyboard playing, because you can pick up on newer bands who are inspired by them. So, A Time and a Place is what follows up from Infinite Space. That is a great song. I love A Time and a Place. It was one that wasn't really my favourite for a long time. I think these last couple of tracks I used to not really listen to that much, but now I do. I listen to them a lot, especially the last track, which I'll get to in a moment. But A Time and a Place is fantastic. I really love, again, Greg Lake's vocals on this was so good. Very powerful on this track, and just the way the piece flows and everything. It's just a fantastic song. Great drumming as well on this track. It's just a fantastic, you know, penultimate track to this album. It's almost like the end of the journey now. So A Time and a Place is like, this is the second last song, and it's just beautifully done. It's a great track, and I could talk about this album for ages. Like I said in one of my first videos, how I could talk about Close to the Edge for ages. I could talk about Tarkus for hours. If you get me going, I will. And A Time and a Place is just a fantastic song. I've been listening to it more and more recently. It's just beautiful. It's just great. And then into the finale track, Are You Ready, Eddie? Which is like almost like a rock and roll kind of feeling track. And it's very fun. It's another kind of fun track, and one you can sing along to very easily. It's very easy, simple chord progression, but it's almost simple but effective, and it's just really great. It's just a fun song to sing along to. Again, it was one that I wasn't really a fan of when I first heard the album. I was not really big into that. I was more into the proggier side of this band, not really the kind of more rock and roll-y kind of stuff. But this was very, very fun. It's almost like a 50s style rock and roll track. Like, it's just great. It's fantastic, and the keyboards as well, fantastic, and the vocals and drum and everything. The harmonies as well. It's really, really great. Harmonies on this album are fantastic. Alright, so I've talked now for 17 minutes about this album. I could talk more about it, but I have limited time. So what are your guys' opinions on Tarkus? I think it's one of my favourite albums. Well, I know it's one of my favourite albums. I think it's one of the best prog albums out there. It's fantastic, and I think that everyone who's into prog should have a copy of this album if they don't already. It's almost like as essential as something like In the Court of the Crimson King or Tubular Bells. It's that much, or Aqualung, or Fragile. I think it's held to that much importance, and how important it is to the progression of progressive rock, and how it flowed throughout the 70s, 80s, and into the modern day, I guess. So yeah, if you like the album, let me know, and I will see you guys on Friday for another Vinyl Community video. Sorry again that this is out a little bit too late. I had a lot of stuff going on yesterday. But yeah, I will see you guys on Friday, which is tomorrow. See ya.